Hello Duelists, it's Tom Box here, welcome to MST.TV, and today I've got a discussion for you guys. It's actually one discussion that I've been waiting for a while before I kind of got into this topic. It's because I don't want to speculate too much, and now that we have tournament data, we can actually talk about it. And what is this topic? It is about everybody's favorite hand trap, Maxx C. Now that it is gone, it actually has quite a big impact towards the format and actually shaped the format as it is now today. Regardless of whether you're on the side or yay, Maxx C is gone, we can actually play more decks, or you're on the other side, nay man, that was a necessary evil, man, why do we have to get rid of it? Now we have all these negation boards. Okay, true, you could be standing on either side. I'm not going to, judge, maybe I am judging. I actually have my points to bring up here today, and there's actually two real points I want to bring up, and that's actually the two main impacts in the format. The first one is combo decks. Holy crap, they are resurfacing all over the place just because their biggest risk and the worst hand trap against them is gone. Think about Pendulum Magician. They're standing up, nice and tall because, well, aside from Electromite being a thing for them and Astrograph being really unfair to most players, let's just say this is one combo deck that can establish one of those boards we can remember during the Pepe format, which is a ton of negation and go ahead and try and break my board. One of those boards, right? You just activate your first card, then go wombo combo, and your opponent needs to have enough cards to counter you. But if they don't, well, you establish that board, your opponent has to eat it basically, and if they can't, well, they automatically lose. Kind of like turn one, the game has already been decided. Now, with all that stuff being said, this actually is a result of card counting. Card counting isn't exactly a new thing. If you have 5 negations versus your opponent's 5 cards, you know that you're going to win because there's no way that he can stop you, unless of course they summon a Denko Sekka, and literally your 5 negates in the back row are basically now all duds. That's how you kind of swing the game back and forth. That's actually strategy. That's actually part of the game. People will adapt. Card counting right now is, say for the Pendulum player, this is how I count anyways. Oh, I have about 5 negations on the board. I think I can eat about 2 mind controls, a Raigeki, and I can still come out of this on top. And then if my opponent tries to do anything, I'll negate that too, so that would be 4 negations. And then maybe 1 card, he can't exactly do anything with his hand anymore anyway. So who cares? So in that regard, yeah, it is pretty simple to count Yu-Gi-Oh! Right now because Maxx C isn't a factor. Especially if Maxx C was a factor, you'd be chasing that number endlessly. These so-called unbreakable boards are technically quite breakable when you give your opponent enough cards to go, oh man, I activate Maxx C on your activation of special summon, and then I'm gonna draw like 20 cards. Alright, now I got my handful of cards and be like, well, how am I gonna break this board? Normally you would card count like, yeah, I got 4 negations. That's why no one's gonna build these boards, because you're gonna give them like 20 cards anyway, so people just skip their turn. Basically Maxx C became a, I just ended your turn, because your opponent can go just throw cards all over the field and basically break your board. So to some degree, people think that card counting is actually more skillful. People have to actually play smarter with their cards. They have to get, rather than 1 for 1 for each card, they have to find ways to work around. Like Purple Poison Magician is a clear example of Pendulum Magicians doing their thing, because if you use Purple Poison, you can actually work around so many forms of negation, because under any sort of destruction, it will activate. Whether it be activating in the Pendulum, in the extra deck, it will activate and pop itself. That is also possible. So therefore, you know what? There's a lot more skill involved in using your actual cards to break boards, rather than solely relying on Maxx C, just shooting a ton of cards on your opponent's side of the field. So some people are like, yeah, this is actually more skillful, and in fact, it slowed the game down. But on the other side, because the combo decks are so, I guess, like all over the place right now, and most of these combo decks are developing boards that are just strictly negation based, where Pendulum Magician, clear example right now. Oh, I have 4 or 5 negations on my turn 1. Go ahead, try and break my board. People are seeing this as really degenerate, like Pepe. Because if you guys remember the Pepe format, it was like, oh, I got Cyber Dragon Infinity, I've got all this resource that's coming back. If you can't break my board, you basically lose, kind of deal. And I don't think that people should gain that much advantage. There should be a way for me to keep up, and therefore Maxx C should still be around. It's a necessary thing to keep these decks in check. But at the same time, You can say that because Maxx C is gone, the format diversified. We have so many decks that people are able to play right now. That's point one. So you could be like, yes, having a limited hand, more of deck diversity, it's just more fun in general, and more things can be competitive. Whereas you could be on the other side, no, we need this to keep these decks in check because board full of negations, I'm not even playing Yu-Gi-Oh anymore, they're literally playing Solitaire. So I don't know where you stand on this. Okay, so now the second point is, currently, and this is actually the trend right now, the better your decks are at eating hand traps or handling hand traps, the stronger your deck is. Pendulum Magician, clear example, you can eat multiple hand traps, you can eat the Ash, you can eat the Ogre, and you can perhaps still keep on going. Especially the Ogre, because if you have Astrograph, wham, you can keep going. And that's why I don't see Astrograph staying alive in our ban list for very long. Astrograph is a huge problem, don't get me wrong, because he's free summons. He's worse than a lot of the stuff that's already on the ban list. But, okay, so you can have decks that are able to eat hand traps, and you can also get other decks that are really good at playing around hand traps with the release of Inspector Border, and from Circuit Break we also got Amano Iwato that's now seeing play. Easy access to full-on monster effect activation prevention. That is also a trend coming up. Like True Dracos. True Dracos run everything that can be hit by hand traps. However, with the summon of one Amano Iwato, you can basically just go Paw Desires. You have no way you can activate anything. You don't have any spirit monsters. Going to draw my 2 cards. Set everything. Card Demise. Draw 3 more cards. Activate all my traps and spells. And now establish the best board possible, because I literally just dug through my deck for like 9 cards. If I can't get 9 cards and fix my board, well then I probably don't deserve to win at that point. But they are able to do so because they have additional normal summons, and they are able to kind of play around hand traps. Again, playing around hand traps or eating hand traps in general is kind of what defines your deck at this point. To some degree, you can say people are building their decks smarter because they can build their decks towards, I guess, handling more hand traps. That is true for, I guess, the more of the meta level decks. But for lower tier decks, it is much harder because they actually have to run more hand traps into their deck and thinning out their own consistency to handle that. And that is, I guess, for the people that are not running as high tier, because if you look at Pen Magicians, your deck is all gas. You don't run traps or anything. Perhaps you run 1 or 2 traps, but the rest of the entire deck is to push through multiple hand traps and building that board. You look at Shaddoll Dinosaurs. You can eat 1 Ash through baiting out a play because it would put you in a good spot, but then you can also just play the Shaddoll Fusion, and then now you're still in a very good spot. All decks are able to push through 2 Ash Blossoms, and then you realize that, hey, this deck is actually pretty good, because the second time I push through it, it means I put myself in a really good spot. I've gained some form of advantage. And there's even Lightsworn Zombies, same idea. They go through their entire combo. They go Lone Fire, and you're like, oh, okay, well, I guess I'll stop it with an Ash. And then they'll go like, okay, well, I'm gonna play Grass Looks Greener on the other side, and boom, you realize, hey, I just lost the game. See, all these decks are able to push through 2 Ashes right now, because Ashes probably was the most popular hand trap, but most people are actually accounting for that, and therefore it's actually not as good as we think right now. Effect Veiler is really good at stopping Electrums. Like, perhaps there are other forms of hand traps that perhaps we haven't really thought of. And even Konami right now is actually pushing forward, I guess, the whole little trap upgrade agenda. There's tons of crazy good traps coming up. And we got even like hand trap counter traps. And if you look at Evenly Matched, of course that card's pretty busted to most people, because like it's very difficult to negate. But right now the current boards, even Pendulum Magicians, used to have a problem with that until Electromite came out. But now most boards are developing the negation required, and it's actually becoming quite difficult to evenly. But what do you guys think about this? Do you think that, yay, we have much better text because we're building our decks towards pushing through hand traps? Or is it the other way around, where weaker decks have to run too many hand traps to actually kind of push forward, whereas before they only needed 1 copy of Maxx C. 1 copy of Maxx C was all they needed to actually stop your opponent's turn from going off, and then they can do their own turn. Let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. And I got one more question for you guys. Say Maxx C was to come back. How many copies would be actually good? 1 copy? Most people will call you a sack for having it, or perhaps you would just play Ash again, because Ash and Maxx C, best feeling ever, hands down. Or is it 2? It's one of those cards where if you have it, you have it. You should expect your opponent to have it sometimes, and you should always play to check for it. That's one way of doing it. Or is it 3? You want 3 copies of it, and prepare your game of Maxx C Minesweeper, because no matter what you do, most likely your opponent is going to have a copy of Maxx C, and therefore your turn will end. But just as they might have Maxx C, you might have a Maxx C to counter them. So is there going to be a bunch of turn swapping? Or, I mean, because that's probably what it's like in OCG right now. They have 3 copies of this stuff. Ash is definitely a necessity over there, because you need to be able to turn that card off. But then again, don't forget, the more hand traps you put into your deck, the thinner your consistency becomes, and you have to run decks that are able to fully combo with very few resources. And for lower tier decks, that isn't exactly a luxury you guys have in terms of deck space and whatnot. So that's basically where I think we are at in terms of the Maxx C situation. Would you actually think that Maxx C would be banned forever? Definitely not. Think about it this way. If you want to buy an ultimate Maxx C right now, it's still very expensive, and it's sold out basically everywhere. It's still about $70 for an ultimate Maxx C. It's a banned card that's worth $70. Yeah, think about it that way. So even if you try to pick up a set, most people would say it is very likely that a Maxx C might come back into the format in the future. Therefore, you should pick some up now while they're kind of cheap. Well, they're not really cheap, but I guess the lower rarities are kind of cheap. But that's all I got for you guys today. If you guys enjoyed this video, hit me up with a thumbs up. If you guys want to see more stuff from MST.TV, hit that subscribe button. I really appreciate you guys. And I've got some mat work coming up. I got some tournament stuff I'm working on. And hopefully I got some fun stuff coming up next week, or maybe near this weekend, because of course we are getting the Kaiba Legendary Collection, and we probably should do something stupid with that too. So stick around, and as always, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV. Hey guys, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please drop us a like so we know we are doing a good job, and you can also subscribe to MST.TV for more fantastic videos by clicking on the button on the left. Don't forget to check out our partners at Imperium Duelist. They make really high quality mats, including some of my own limited edition release stuff. And if you want to check out one of our past videos, click here on the right. As always, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV, and I'll see you next time.